Okay, so let's write this next paragraph. Poet Pope. Let's just call him Pope. Pope now uses a 10-1 ratio early in the poem to show his greater for. So bad. Let's use a synonym for bad for unworthy, right? For unworthy critics. Greater disregard for blank than blank. Unworthy poets. Not only, but he also later let's just make it really clear that, but later he also speaks ill of most critics in general, stating in line. So then instead of the capital, we just put it in brackets and made it lowercase. So stating in line, so 26, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 19, and 20. Yet if we look more closely, we shall find most of the seeds of judgment in their mind. A mere. So we want to comment on this line 19, at least at a cursory level. We can't just mention it and then not even, like, we don't want to quote it and then not even comment on it. So we've got to at least comment on it. A mere action of closer scrutiny. Mere action of closer scrutiny or inspection of the average critic, and the reader will find that not just a few, but most again, I want to say this here. most critics possess. So now let's remove the quotes because there's a lot of brackets there, right? So most critics possess the seeds. What's a synonym for seeds? You could say the building blocks of someone. Sort of the innate building blocks. That's a long phrase. Innate building blocks of someone with the traits of judgment. Let's just say the innate traits. The innate trait. The innate trait of judgment. In their brains. Let's just quote the whole thing. Seeds of judgment in their mind. Could we comment on the fact that he only, gave them one mind in this line? Does that support our thesis? Instead of saying in their minds, most of them. Or is that a little much? Is that like a stretch? These are considerations you want to think about. Well, can I argue it well? Do I need to argue it? Am I making good enough arguments so that I don't need to argue that? Yeah, I think we're right there on the line. I think it's a little bit of a stretch. It also doesn't rhyme exactly with find. A lot of his stuff is not exact, but it's close. I mean, look at the stanza. Find mind, light, right, traced, graced, faced. Schools, fools, sense, fence, right, spite, ride, side. Spite, right. I mean, it's exast, past, last, pass, ass, isle, Nile, call. Well, equivocal, but it's still call, C-A-L. So, yeah, I think that's a bit of a stretch. But, yeah. A mere action of closer scrutiny or inspection of the average critic, and the reader shall find that it's not the best phrasing at all. Not just a few, but most critics. However, since we haven't had this kind of phrasing before, it actually might come off as sort of creative and interesting. I just don't like the critic and the reader. It looks like, yeah. So we don't do this a lot, so it's not. I don't think it's terrible when you step back and look at the whole piece. A mere action of closer scrutiny or inspection of the average critic, and the reader shall find that. Let's change this to is. Is all that is required of the reader, so that he shall find that here we're using he/she, she. I don't like using it that much. I just think if there's another way to phrase it. I don't know why. I don't even think I cared that much when I was in school, but I just feel like it's intrusive when you're writing a formal essay. Unless that's the point. If the point is it's he or she, if you're talking about gender or you're trying to bring that in as a factor. But if we're not talking about gender at all, is this not a consideration in the essay? Then I don't like using it. I just think it's extraneous and it You don't want to bring in words and language and dialogue and phrases that have nothing to do with your thesis or your supporting arguments. We could say he, but I also don't want to, I don't want to be, elitist in terms of gender. I don't want teacher to think that I'm not being considerate, So it's tricky. So let's look at it. So a mere action of closer scrutiny or inspection of the average critic. So let's just say scrutiny of the average critic is all that is required of the reader. So that he shall find that, let's just say he. We'll take a risk. I'd rather say he rather than he/she. We'll take a risk. And hopefully, the teacher doesn't mind it, and because it's a bit intrusive. It's small, but all these things add up. So let's take a little bit of a risk. So it flows better. So that he shall find that not just a few, but most critics possess the innate trait of judgment in their mind. And then we've said, meaning this. So what we could say is this line reflects, right? This phrase, this lattermost phrase, that means the most recent phrase that we've mentioned. I don't like to use it a lot, but once in a blue moon, not a big deal, I don't think. This lattermost phrase reflects Pope's opinion. And again, we're driving the point home here. Pope's opinion that a large swath of the literary critic population is already judgmental by nature, so that once they become a critic, a working critic, then writing, negative reviews is going to be second nature to them. This further underscores, this further supports. We use underscores in the other poem, but I haven't used it in this one. This further underscores it's tough because we don't want to say the author here. We don't want to say the writer here. We don't even want to say the poet here, because those are the two occupations that we're talking about. We're talking about poet/author/writer as one of the occupations, and the other one is going to be the critic. So, and we'll look up critic. We'll see if we can use maybe another word or two that means critic, but it's a different word. So we have to say Pope again. It's further underscores. I just don't like saying Pope at the beginning and then Pope again. Let's call him Poet Pope. Or let's just call him commentarian. I don't even know if that's a word. I guess this is saying it's not a word. I want to be able to refer to Pope as something else. But this is what makes writing interesting. This is what makes each essay interesting. It's kind of a new adventure. Every time you write an essay, the different poem, different play, different, a lot of times different teacher, different class, different grade. I mean, it's just a new adventure, a new challenge. So you just want to keep your brain moving. Keep your brain moving and try to be creative. Try to be interesting. Try to be dynamic. Try to wow. there's a pretty average movie called 21. I kind of liked it. But this guy's trying to get into, I think, Harvard med school, and he's like, and the dean is like, yeah, I want you to wow me, and he's like, and he I think he went to MIT, and yeah, and he was an undergrad there, and he's like this math stud, and he ended up like gambling. He ended up becoming a part of this team that won millions of dollars, and from the casinos by counting cards and stuff, and he got beat up, and his money got taken, and I think he lost the girl, and it was a wild story. So then he came back and he told the dean, the story, and the dean's like mouth is agape. He's like, "Did I wow you? Did I blow you away?" And that's kind of the same thing here. We want to wow the reader. We want to wow the grader. Um, we want to we just want to impress them, and we want to do a good job. So all these thoughts are helpful. This further under, so let's just call him Pope for now. We'll you know what? I'm gonna actually take a risk. All right, this further underscores poet Pope's um virulent commentary, which is a little bit of a heavy word, but I'm ramping up the aggression because now we've got two main points, two strong points in the body. Virulent commentary. Where he largely so I think we already said disregards. I think we did. Actually, I don't know. Let me see. I feel like we did say disregards. Let me just expand this. Disregards. I don't know if we did. This is going to be good. We'll be able to do this. All right. Where he largely disregards critics overall, at least in comparison to his more measured reproach of content creators, meaning authors or writers or poets overall. Okay. I think this is a good opportunity to mention authors or writers or poets, because now we can weave in those words, author, writer, or poet, if we want to keep the variety in words when we're talking about critic versus author, critic versus writer, critic versus poet. I think it'll keep it interesting. I've tried doing it another way too, which is just like, okay, let's only say author. But in a short essay, especially in a short essay, like 5 pages, even 8 pages, it's just so repetitive. It's kind of like saying, this shows this. This passage shows this. I used to do that. I'm sure I've done that. I mean, I've tried a lot of stuff. I mean, when you get good, when you get better, it's because you've been bad. It's same thing with, all the great directors, James Cameron, all those guys. They say, make a bunch of bad movies, and then you'll make some better ones. He's like, you're never going to make good movies unless you make some bad movies. Like if you want to be a writer, go write some terrible books, and then you're going to get better. So, but yeah, I tried only using like author, or this passage displays this passage displays that. And it just comes off as so dry and boring and repetitive. So you want to use the lexicon. You want to use the dictionary, use the thesaurus, and use colorful words that are appropriate, but to vary your word choice. Very, very helpful. And like we might change of virulent popes, because it's not really virulent. It's I don't know if it's harsh. Yeah, I mean, I guess it is. I guess it is. I guess, you know, we might change this though. Yeah, I mean, I'll keep that in mind. But like, we might change that word synonym. So, okay. Meaning, this further underscores Pope's virulent commentary, where he largely disregards critics overall, at least in comparison to his more measured reproach of content creators, meaning authors or writers or poets overall. Yes. And that is our thesis. He maligns the critic much more harshly. Okay, so we'll double space this. And we're looking at about 1.5 pages. So I think it's going to be at least 5, maybe 6, but I think it's going to be around 5. But yeah, I think it's a good start, and we'll see you guys next time. Thank you.